Hello, BookTube. Well, it's a bleak and barren Sunday here at Hyde Cottage. For those of you who are new to the channel, that's my name for Sundays, when there's no mail. No free books through the mail slot in the front door. No plunk, plunk, plunk of treasures hitting the foyer floor. Nothing. I have to eke through the day somehow, with the paltry number of books I already own. And usually, I console myself with a tag, and I'm doing that again today. I found a tag. I found it on Michael S. Deutsch's channel, Catalyst Reads, and it's the used books tag, which is kind of amazing that I haven't done it before now. I hope I haven't done it before now. According to him, it was created on Time for Books, and I will try to remember to leave a link down below. And it's all about secondhand bookstores, which are the only place I'm going to get books on a day like today. Question number one is, tell us about your favorite secondhand book you own. Show it off if you can. I don't have any favorite secondhand books. I have lots of secondhand books that I'm very glad that I found. All of those Regency romances are secondhand, almost all of them. Almost all of these Penguin Classics are secondhand. Because you can't see down on the bottom shelf are all of the mass market Penguin Classics that are the ones I actually bought years and years and years ago. These I have just found over time. And that's always fun. But a favorite? I'm going to have to pass. I don't think that any of them qualifies. Question number two, tell us where you like to shop for your secondhand books and why you love it there. There are charity shops here in Boston. There are used bookstores like Raven Books or Commonwealth Books. But for me, the number one place, if you watch this channel, you'll know the answer already. It's the Brattle Bookshop, a three-story bookstore on West Street in Boston that is adjacent to, right next to an open lot that's full of sale carts, $1, $3, and $5 books. There are 10 or 15 sale carts, and also the walls on either side of the lot have bookshelves. When I wasn't housebound because I was worried about leaving a puppy alone, I went to the Brattle almost every day because one of the neatest things about it, there are many neat things about the Brattle Bookshop. One of the neat things about it is that it is unlike a lot of secondhand bookstores in the United States and throughout the world, in that its turnover of stock is astronomically high. So this is not a secondhand bookshop like some that I have known in my life, where the stock is exactly the same from week to week, from month to month. If you see a book there that you kind of sort of want, you're trying to justify the expense or adding another book to your collection, in those bookstores you have forever to think about it. It's not going anywhere. With the Brattle, that's absolutely not true. They are constantly, energetically buying books. With the result that the pricing table directly inside the front door is always covered in new stuff. The carts outside are constantly shifting, and the shelves inside are constantly shifting. So you can literally find something new every day, every time you go there, which is great fun. And that's a large part of the reason that I like it, is that it's never boring. I also like that it's home. I've been shopping at the Brattle for a very long time. I've known its owner for a long time, and I've been shopping there far longer than any of the store's employees have been alive. So they grew up, they learned how to walk, they went to grade school, they went to high school. Eventually, their lives brought them to the point where they thought they might like to get a job at a quaint old used bookstore. And I was there in the lot on their very first day. I was there when they visited as children. I've been there in the atmosphere the whole time. And that sort of gets passed on from staff to staff. So the people that are there now there are none that were there when I first went there, of course. But the affection is still there. The Brattle likes their regular customers, the ones that aren't, barking insane, or who are barking insane in palatable ways. But they would definitely be my number one pick. Let's see here. Where does that leave us? Show us 3 recent thrift store buys that you are excited over and explain why you love them. I'm not going to show you 3. I'm going to show you 5 because I just went to the Brattle yesterday. And I don't go there as often as I used to by a long shot. But yesterday I happened just by random chance to get an offer of someone to sit with Freda for a couple of hours. That's all I had, so I took advantage of it to go to the Brattle, and I found books. I want to show them to you, so that we'll have a kind of a book haul in the midst of all of everything else. So the first one is this. It's Margot Asquith's Great War Diary. She was the wife of Prime Minister H.H. Asquith, and who took the country into World War I, and she had kept an intermittent diary throughout her whole life. She grew up as an extremely privileged daughter of great wealth, wild as a hawk, kind of a queen. That was a phrase that was used to describe her. And she stayed that way throughout her life, just an absolutely acute, biased, but acute observer of personalities and events of her day. And this is from Oxford, and it came out in I think 2013 or 2014. So I was well in the reviewing game, but not only did I not get a copy, I don't recall it. I don't recall even knowing about it at the time. That's the sort of thing that keeps me humble when it comes to trying to canvass all the new books of one year, is that great big things will slip right by. And this is going to be enormous amounts of fun. I love reading diaries anyway. But everything that I've ever read about or by her, she's just one of these fascinating figures. And then the next one is a big fat biography. It's H.W. Brand's. It's T.R. Theodore Roosevelt, The Last Romantic. And it's a great, huge thing. This hardcover, I don't know what is going on with it, but it seems much bigger than I remembered the hardcover being. Certainly much bigger, twice the size of the trade paperback. But I am, as I've mentioned on this channel before, in 2018 I am researching and then drafting and then writing a full-length biography of William Howard Taft. Something this generous. And Taft was Roosevelt's close friend, and then political confidant, and then political rival. And that makes Theodore Roosevelt books fair game now. In terms of research, I can justify buying them and rereading them because Taft is going to figure he's going to bulk large in any Theodore Roosevelt biography. I'm not going to indulge in that to any great extreme, because for my purposes, the further away from 1912 that a biography of Theodore Roosevelt gets, the less it's going to do me any good in terms of casting any kind of light on William Howard Taft. I want, I will definitely take later synthesis like this, books that where I want to know what the writer thinks of Taft. But in terms of primary materials, I want biographies of their friendships, biographies of Roosevelt's presidency, biographies of the day and the time, much closer to the time, so that I'm dealing with people who could have met these men or aren't summarizing for history, don't know what's going to be history and what's not yet, so they're not sorting anything. I want that sort of thing, but I can justify this. And this one came from the library of Ruth B. Grant, who stamped it twice on the facing pages. And I love, you might think, oh, well, isn't that annoying? But I actually love it because it means that since this isn't in her library anymore, it's in my library, I'm sticking it to an anal retentive a-hole every single time I use the book, which is really nice. It's kind of an added benefit of having it in the first place. Then the next one is an anthology edited by someone that we've heard on this channel before. Not that by this point there's anyone we haven't heard on this channel before. But this is called Green Treasury. It's an anthology of nature writing spanning thousands of years, going all the way back to Homer and the Bible. And it's by Edwin Way Teale, who is a great natural history writer on his own, a great nature writer who's done a whole shelf full of books. He breaks this up by animals. He does the seasons. It's got original illustrations. And a lot of the excerpts in it, I won't particularly be interested, but I'm sure a lot of them I will. I don't recall ever having read Green Treasury. And it also has a long introduction by Edwin Way Teale, and I love his writing, so I had to get it. And then the next one is something I mentioned on this channel just the other day, and I found it at the Brattle for $1. $1. It's this, the biography of film by the great David Thompson, who I said, somebody asked me a question on one of those endless Q&A videos, who should I read about film? And there are many names that come to mind, but him before anyone. And I wanted to give you a taste of why that is by reading you. On the subway back, I opened at random to a page and encountered genius, because that's what happens. You encounter just genius with this guy, no matter when, no matter where you turn. But I wanted to show you. I turned to the H's. Yeah, I turned to the H's, and I got a double blast of great fun and eloquence, because he's eloquent in every way. It's set up like an encyclopedia, so it's just alphabetical, straight through the world of film. And I opened to the H's, and I got to Philip Seymour Hoffman, which has only his birth date, because he hadn't killed himself yet. But the entry begins with, where do we begin? Where will he end? And you just read that. Thompson didn't know. He had no way of knowing. But how resonant is that? He talks about Hoffman's great turn for, just a little bit of as a dissolute and malicious playboy in The Talented Mr. Ripley, and it makes another point here that, again, you couldn't see coming. You couldn't know the resonance would be there. That's further proof, if anyone still needs it, of the gap between working for a Minghella and a shoemaker. Hoffman could be turned into an institution, but never properly tested. He is so good that only the best material is going to help build our sense of him. Meanwhile, search him out as you might Kevin Spacey. There is the same very dangerous talent at work, astounding, yet so pronounced it could help make its own prison. And that sort of thing just gets you thinking. And then on the next page, the next entry is William Holden. And I just have to read this. It's just so good. When Holden died, he was 63, Clint Eastwood's age in The Line of Fire. That's a way of illustrating the variable effects of age on a face. For Holden, at the end, could look like the most used person in Hollywood. Alcohol must take a lot of the credit, for Holden had been so serious a victim of drink that he had killed a bystander in a car accident in Europe. He had had his day. In the late 50s, he was so powerful at the box office that nearly every script went through his agent. But the suffering in his face found no solace in power. The look of pain sustained two fine films, The Wild Bunch and Network, so that we rubbed our eyes to recall the fresh-faced enthusiast from The Golden Boy. You could pick a dozen or so maturing close-ups of Holden, and the series would tell you the horrible story of movies as a marinade called early embalming. God, just sharp elbows in every direction, and yet so memorable that and the wonder of this thing. It's like 1,000 pages long. The wonder of the Biographical Dictionary film is that he's that good on everything. Every entry is opinionated, argument starting, eloquent, memorable. I can't praise it highly enough. It is a definitive work on film, and this was only $1. It's in pretty much perfect condition, so I was very happy to find it. And then the last book is a pure treat, and also $1, so I couldn't pass it up. It's this. It's J.B. Priestley, The Edwardians. That's the cover. Hats, ladies and gentlemen. The Edwardians love their hats, and the back is Edward, King Edward. And this is a big, heavily illustrated sort of companion to the time period. Not meant, as he says in one of his first sentences in the book, it's not meant at all to be a work of rigorous scholarship. It's more, his publishers sort of like the idea of him writing up the Edwardians because he himself was a late Edwardian. And he'd already done one of these oversized picture books on the Prince Regent, who would later go on to become King George IV, called The Prince of Pleasure, which was wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Wasn't, again, a full-dress scholarly biography, but it was indispensable. You have to have it if you're interested in the subject anyway. And I love the Edwardians. I have a ton of books on their period, which is the long Edwardian period would be when Edward was still Prince of Wales, but a fully grown man approaching old age. And the Queen had been absent from public life for a long time, and had only begun lately a little to filter back. But the ethos of her era was shifting towards Edward, towards a more libertine, more pleasure-seeking ethos. So you take the long Edwardian period, so the late 1890s, then all through his reign, and then he dies in 1910. And then you extend the Edwardian era just a bit because the typical in the popular imagination, when they used to think about the Edwardian era, the typical ending of the Edwardian era is, of course, the First World War, when lights are going out all over Europe, when the days of pleasure are over. And Priestley has a wonderful coda at the end of this book. Uh, uh, Edwardian England is a time and a land that seems across a vast dark chasm of war. Over there, the afternoons seem to linger in mellow sunlight, and the nights are immediately romantic. There is illusion, of course, here, but it is not all a cheat. Something did go. Something was lost. Yet again, a smaller something did not go, was not lost, but survives in those of us who grew up as Edwardians and went into the war and came out of it. There is, I think, beyond our grousing and grumbling, a kind of optimism. Not large and wide and one huge smile, almost tiny, but very compact and somehow indestructible. It encourages us to engage in all manner of doubtful ventures, as, for instance, trying to huddle Edwardian England between the covers of a book. I really like that. I haven't read this in years. I had a copy years and years ago. I am sure that I will like it much more now that I know more about the Edwardian era. And I'm sure it will make me yearn for a Priestley revival. I would love that. I don't know why it hasn't happened, but it never really wrote a bad line of prose. And not only that, but he had a slight breath of a second chance at the apple of fame. When one of his novels was adapted by the BBC into an adaptation that a lot of people really liked. So I can wait for it, but in the meantime, this is going to go right on the shelf. You can't help but call a book on the Edwardians a book about Edward. So it's going to go on the royal shelf, and it's going to go right next to The Prince of Pleasure. I'm so happy that I found it. And those 5 books are a perfect example of the variety that awaits you every day at the Brattle Bookshop, which is why I love to go there. I wish I had a more reliable dog-sitting arrangement. I don't need one forever. Once Freda goes through, childhood, once she's done with being a puppy, once she's an adult dog, I will just tell her, okay, when I set up the room here and I give you some treats and I lay out your food and I kiss you goodbye, it means you get to relax. You get to hop up on the couch and go to sleep for a bit. I'll be back in 2 or 3 hours. It's no big deal at all. The only person that you can't explain that to is either a very young puppy or a very sick old dog who knows you're coming back but doesn't want you to go. That's it. It's just the ends of a dog's life that I have to stay housebound for. The rest of it, no. Not to be cavalier. I like Freda's company a lot more than I like being out of her company. But I've let errands stack up. I've let actual real-world obligations stack up because I can't really, in good conscience, leave her unless she's got really good care here. That won't always be true. But in the meantime, I treasure every trip to the Brattle, so I was very glad to get these, and I was happy to wait overnight to show them to you. But anyway, let's get back to the tag. Show and tell. Tell us about and show, if possible, the worst used book that you ever bought. Well, I don't know what that would be. I'm not really sure about the best used book, the worst used book. I don't even know what that means. Well, let's just move on. Tips and advice. Please give some of your best advice and tips for book lovers who are new or unfamiliar with purchasing used books. Okay, I can do that. I'm a font of tedious advice. Used book purchasing piece of advice number 1. Do not use the internet, no matter how tempting it is. New books, yes. New books used, yes. So you go on, for instance, Amazon or something, and you're looking for the new Donna Leon mystery, and it's right there for $23.45 or whatever with their discount. And right below it in little type, you see there are used offers on this book. Okay, fine. It's a new book. The author got a case from the warehouse. Fine. But I'm talking used books. I'm talking something like this. Don't use the internet, Amazon or anybody else, because you'll be lied to. The book you get in the mail, it might be the way it's described, but it also might not be, and there's nothing you can do about it. You go into an endless rigmarole with a secondhand seller who's already been dishonest enough to lie about the condition of the book. Then you're going to be at it forever. Your time is more valuable than the waste of it that buying used books online almost always entails. So find a shop that, find your local used bookshop and patronize them. That is piece of advice number one. Piece of advice number two is don't just grab the book and add it to your pile. Examine it. There's a reason that it's used. And if I'm not saying that it has to be pristine. For instance, if none of these books are all pristine, but many times at the Brattle, I've bought a book that had underlining and marginalia, because underlining and marginalia doesn't bother me at all. But I kick myself whenever I forget to do that and buy a book for $1 or $3 or whatever that doesn't have any marginalia or underlining. Instead, it has that obnoxious neon highlighting where the person's just highlighted whole pages at a time, where the highlighting is the act of reading for them. They're not actually picking out anything to remember. Mindless and utterly defacing. You want to make sure that that isn't the case. You want to make sure to give the book the once-over. And if you're used to shopping in retail environments, then you won't have those reflexes. They won't be at the forefront of your mind. Because retail, the books are all the same, and they're all pristine. So that'd be another piece of advice. And when it comes specifically to the Brattle, which has the outdoor sales carts where I live, I hardly buy anything inside the store. But on the outside sale carts, there's $1, $3, and $5. And the one piece of advice, I have two pieces of advice for the outdoor carts, but the main piece of advice that I always try to tell people is don't push fate. Don't push karma. What you see out there is what you see out there. You don't go to the Brattle sale carts outside, which are not organized in any way except by price, and say, well, you don't stand at the front of the lot with your arms akimbo and say, all right, well, I need a copy of 1984 in hardcover. No. Go with the flow. Be open to what the carts are offering you. That's piece of advice number one. And piece of advice number two, when you're looking at $1, $3, and $5 carts, get everything that you want. Don't get... I do it all the time, so I'm a hypocrite for saying it, but I don't do it anymore. I used to do it all the time, but now if I see a book out for dirt cheap, I just get it. But when the prices are that low, you ought to indulge yourself. So don't carry around a $3 book saying, oh, I don't know. Just add it to the pile. You're not going to have to worry about it if we ever shop at the Brattle together. But just in case you go there without me, that's the second piece of advice. And that's it. That is the used books tag for this bleak and barren Sunday. This video went long, I swear. These videos are going long no matter what I do. But it did make me feel good, especially showing you these books. This reminded me that I got a little window of free time yesterday. And the next time I go to the Brattle, I will do the same thing. I will load up on books, come back here and show them to you. But in the meantime, I'm gonna sign off and find some other way to fill this bleak and barren Sunday. But I'll see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.